Hi, I'm Dave Womble. I'm the Chief Marketing Officer of Operation Dental, and I'm the guest host today on the Driven Dental Podcast. Today we'll be talking with Dr. Nirh, who is our partner dentist at Sandmine Dentistry. He's been with the company since 2021. He is actually leading one of our most successful de novos, and we'd like to welcome to the show. We're going to talk about his career path, how he's gotten to where he's at, leadership lessons, things that he's learned as running a de novo from the day it opened till now, and we'll just basically have hopefully a great conversation. So welcome, Dr. Nirh.
Thank you for having me. I'm glad to be here.
I kind of figured first thing we could start with is just kind of introduce you to the audience, kind of give me a little bit of your background and talk a little bit about where you came from.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm a Florida native, born and raised Orlando, Florida. Went to school here, went to UCF. Went to Boston for dental school, went to Tufts University. Awesome experience. And then I did something a lot of people, especially in the South, don't do as much. I did something called a GPR, which is like a general practice residency. It's 1 year, way more popular in the Northeast. So I did that in Brooklyn, New York, at a place called NYU Lutheran Medical Center. Amazing experience. And that happened to be 2020, 2021, 2019, 2020, there was that thing called COVID going on. So being in South Brooklyn, big change. So, one thing led to another, found my way back to Orlando or Central Florida in general. I was working in, a big group, and it was okay. First job, it's always has some speed bumps. I had a friend that worked in Winter Park. And one thing led to another, and I spoke to Dr. Kelly, and I had met Dr. Kelly in college. Actually, I remembered him, and started an associateship, kind of an office near the airport. That'd be Conway Oaks Dental, and dentistry, your path. You have a path in mind, but you never know the steps it takes to get to where you end up. So now we're sitting here, all approaching year 2 of Sandmine Dentistry de Novo. Like you said, we started in December of 2023, and couldn't be happier.
Yeah, that's good to hear. And I'm glad you're able to come back to Orlando and join us. And actually, we have something in common. I didn't realize we're both natives, because I was actually born and raised in Winter Park.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Yeah. I grew up in Dr. Phillips, but It was when it was like not even a paved road.
Right.
For those who don't know, that area now, it's filled with like amazing homes, amazing restaurants. It's a really good area to live in.
It's become a very affluent area in Orlando. So it's definitely one of those things. And I've actually been here for, I don't want to admit this, but I'm hitting my mid 50s, and it's one of those things that I've seen the whole area grow. I remember when you used to see orange groves in
exactly
in the area. Yeah. Now it's like completely, you can't go anywhere. You can't throw a rock and not hit a housing development. It feels like,
some townhome, condo, apartment complex somewhere.
That's pretty much it. So it was interesting. I didn't know, where did you meet, since you met him in college? How did you meet Dr. Kelly in college? I'm just kind of curious.
Well, I went to UCF, and especially now, they have a very large and strong pre-dental club. Back then, it was 40 of us, you know. So every month and a half, we would meet, go over some things, have a guest speaker. And one time, the guest speaker was Dr. Kelly. And it was kind of cool, because every time you have a guest speaker, it's always like a dentist or a specialist who's considerably older than you, 40s, 50s. You're, at the time I was 21 years old. Dr. Kelly came in, smooth, suave, cool, funny, no PowerPoint. Did he not do it on purpose? We don't know. But I feel like all of us is connected better with someone who was also in their 20s or 30s. I'm not sure how old he was at the time. We're talking, more than 10 years ago. So, he had his own practice, and we're talking, and someone like a personality like that, you just remember, I still remember quite a few of those presenters from back then. And then one night I'm at dinner and drinks with a friend, and, she worked in Winter Park, and she told me about, who she works with and all this. I'm like, that sounds really familiar. And showed me a photo. I was like, oh yeah.
You know him.
I know that guy. Yeah.
I remember him.
At that point, it'd be like, okay, it might've been 6 years, 7 years, but and then, I was looking definitely to move, situations.
Right.
The office I was in, they had offered me, equity, partnership, whatever really I wanted. And I just knew it wasn't the right fit. You wake up every day and you're like, kind of just like, okay, here we go.
You know when it's not the right place for you.
Yeah.
And I hear that a lot, actually, especially for people, our dentists and staff that are coming from some of the larger DSOs, that, some of those days you're waking up going, oh, I got to go into work today. And that's the worst feeling you can ever have, especially with what you do and how intensive your job is.
Yeah. Yeah. Like the taxing part of dentistry is very unique. It's physical and mental.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're being told what to do by people that have no idea on either of those, that just drive around and work on laptops all day, and you're like, listen, I don't think we're connecting here. I don't think you're understanding. Didn't work out. Reached out, and I think 4 months later, I got a text saying, hey, there might be something like very soon. And that led me to an office kind of near the airport, area called Conway, pretty popular area, older area of town, booming office, and it was a great experience.
Yeah, it's one of our bigger practices, 3 dentists. Forget how many hygienists, but they're one of our flagship practices, one of our flagship practices. And, basically you can't remember when you came on board. It was definitely an exciting time for all of us. We were up to 3 dentists, and, it was great to see the practice growing and changing, and really going under a major renovation, which I know that was kind of a fun experience too. But I guess one of those things where obviously, and it's one of those things, being an executive, sitting in on our exec call, stuff like that, was hearing nothing but good things about you, I will say. And when we started talking about our first Novo, your name just kept floating to the surface. There was no, it wasn't like we should look to hire somebody outside or whatever. It's like, Dr. Nirh might be a great choice for this. Let's, and that's when Peter and Matt approached you about the idea. I know it's one of those things, it wasn't a long story, but it's still one of those things. How did that kind of come into play?
It was super interesting, actually. We had an implant course actually across the hall, and it was a 2-day course, kind of like a Friday, Saturday type thing. And the first evening of the implant course, it was like me, another doc, and Dr. Kelly. We just had dinner, hanging out, we're having some dinner, having some drinks. The next day, we got some procedures. It was kind of an early night, and Dr. Kelly was just talking about, new locations in town and growth in Florida. We all were talking about how Central Florida grew so much, with the COVID boom. A lot of people moved here, stayed here. Mm-hmm. And, you're local, I'm a local. We know what areas of town are suddenly out of nowhere starting to boom, that were areas
absolutely
you wouldn't even go to as a kid. You were like, are there roads there? Till this day, I don't think there's streetlights outside my office right now. But
yeah, actually, I think you're right.
Yeah, I went there once. I forgot something. I went there like at 7:30. I was like, oh, it is pitch black out here. But we were there and we're just talking. He throws out a location, Davenport, Florida. Mm-hmm. I'm like, oh, that's a booming area. I mean, I wouldn't mind looking into that with you guys. And things went pretty quick after that.
Yeah.
That was the summer. Mm-hmm. I'd closed on a house maybe 3 weeks before that. That was about 30 minutes away, but it moved pretty fast after that. I think we aligned on a lot of things. What we wanted design-wise, we aligned on just about everything.
Awesome to hear.
One thing led to another, and that winter, December, opened our doors on the 11th.
Yeah, I remember that well. Obviously, heading up the marketing team, we were making sure that you were well stocked with patients, shall we say? I think we opened with around somewhere between 130 and 150 patients scheduled. Which opening in December, which is one of the worst months you could probably open a practice, to be honest, we actually got you guys busy pretty quick. Yeah, I mean,
pretty fortunate. Obviously, there's days where you're just sitting around. But when you're in an office that's like a de novo, a startup, a de novo is something that you start from scratch. There's no name, there's nothing there. You don't know what's going to happen. We had days where no one was walking in the door. I was sitting around, but still swamped because you're organizing things. You're getting, your materials ready. You're organizing where you want things to go. You're training the staff on how you like things. You don't really realize all that stuff before you get into it a whole lot. You're like, oh, I want this organized. I need that. And you don't have it. So you're just ordering it. But I remember the day we switched our banner. We didn't have a sign outside yet. Banner from opening soon to now open. It was like the floodgates that open. That's one of the things about opening in an area that is growing exponentially, where businesses haven't really caught up. Like we barely had a Publix, since when is that possible? Publix is a grocery store that's in every corner of Florida, Georgia, but
pretty much.
there was one and it was slammed and they were working on two more. And so, we got there early, we got entrenched in the community very quickly. So by, late December, January, things were picking up, a lot more than any of us had thought in the office. We were like, oh, where did this come from?
Well, actually, and there's something I kind of want to step back for, if we can go back just a little bit in time. So you're getting to the point where you're, you take on, so you approach, you say, okay, let's do this. What was going through your head and your thoughts as you were getting closer to that opening day? I mean, as far as how were you feeling, what were you thinking? I mean, was there some mix of anxiety and nervousness and excitement, or was it just pretty much, we're going to crush it?
Yeah. Oh, it's like a million and one things. It's really everything, wow, I'm leaving a pretty well-oiled machine practice that I'm in at 7:45. I'm out the door. Mm-hmm. If the day ends at 4:30, I'm in the car at 4:32. Obviously that's the difference. The responsibility is less. It was a nice transition because I know I still had a decent amount of patients where things had to be taken care of. Patients wanted it done by me, or I need to finish the case. I didn't want to throw it off on someone else. So Monday through Thursday, I was in Sandmine Dentistry, our new de novo here. And Fridays, I was just finishing cases at the old office, and they were totally fine with that, which is good. So, that's not often the case. So I do half day Fridays there, just, wrapping things up. And each Friday subsequently got a little slower. But it's a million and one things because it's things you don't think about that you've never thought about. When you're in school, residency, in your first, second job, things are there. Materials are there. Whatever's there is there. You really just use what materials and instruments the previous dentist or the owner wants.
Right.
So when you go there and you're like, okay, well, what do we want to order? I was like, what do you mean? So I had to really sit down and think through every single procedure, every single step, not just what I use every time, what I might use, what I sometimes use, what I could need. There's still things in the office we've never used once, but you could need it at some point.
And better be prepared, have it versus not have it at all.
Absolutely. Yeah,
absolutely.
You'll definitely be in a bind, so sitting down and getting all that figured out. Which instruments do I like? Which do I not like? Which do I, now looking back, wish I didn't get because I don't like them. It's a million and one things to the point where you open and you're like, did we cover all the bases? Is something missing? What did we forget? Did someone mention something to me 5 minutes ago? Did I already forget it? There's just so many moving parts on top of the fact that you have patients coming in the door that don't know you.
Yeah.
You have virtually an entirely new staff that also doesn't know you, doesn't know how you work necessarily. I tried to spend decent time with them before, but it's tricky. I knew they were good. They were there days I wasn't, just prepping. But yeah, it's a million and one things. And it was exciting, but also nerve-wracking. Oh man, this is a brand new office. Is this gonna be, how slow is this gonna be?
And to touch on something you brought up earlier, and it's something that I find interesting, is that, you look at what motivates people and, what drives us, and I think that's one of the things I do love about this industry, especially as you see so many entrepreneurial minds. I can't name many industries that you see people graduating out of college and a high percentage of them are going to go start their own business. It's just not that common.
Yeah.
And so obviously you were working at a very successful practice, doing really well there. What motivated you to say, okay, I'm willing to take this risk and jump over to a complete unknown to be like, I think this is going to be great, but there's no guarantee.
Yeah. Yeah. No, touching on what you said, I agree. Dentistry is very unique, especially in healthcare, where for some reason a lot of us, not everyone, just has that more entrepreneurial mindset. They want to try different things, want to do different things. This is because dentistry, the scope of it is so large. There's dentists that only do implant surgeries. There's dentists that only do veneers. There's dentists that only do airway, and then the most of us fall somewhere in between, do a little bit of this, a little bit of that. So you can go so many different ways, not just with how you practice, but where you practice, how the practice works. I know dentists have 40 offices. Some have one small one, and they're still completely happy. You're maxing out that, kind of that business mindset. And it's unique because it's available. Everyone has, most adults will get 32 teeth in their life, and quality dentistry is something everyone wants to attain to. So the opportunity is there, and it's not a niche. It's pretty generalized. I think as a country, we do pretty well with giving quality dental options. So, I agree. It's just a different mindset that everyone just sees from the previous generation, or even people 5-10 years older, and they want to, or most people at least, want to go to that, grow to that.
Mm-hmm.
We're at the point now, I think I've been out for a while now, and majority of my friends have their own office or have a partnership or have something like that, because that mindset's there. When you have skin in the game, it just gives you a little bit more of like that mentality.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things, but it's also having that mindset to take that risk, because that is the bigger part of it. Because obviously there is a lot of risk involved with doing this.
Yeah.
And something you kind of talked about earlier and I want to kind of maybe circle around on this, since we are kind of now getting to the open up the practice and where you were talking about, there were some downtime, things like that, and you're working with the new staff. With the new staff, how were you building the rapport with them? How were you building that relationship? Because it's one thing to say, okay, we meet, pre-open, had a couple friends and family come in, but even then it's still, you don't have that rapport yet. That's trust, you have to have the trust in them. They have to have that trust in you. And as the leader of the practice, they're looking at you obviously to drive the direction of how things are going to go. How did you build that relationship? And what did you have any techniques or anything that you use to help you build that rapport with them?
Right. It's a tough one, because they're dental assistants or they're hygienists, you're a dentist. They're not new to this. They've worked with, you're not sure how many dentists, but you still want to be true to yourself on what kind of leader and healthcare practitioner you are. Obviously, time is a big aspect, but how you handle certain situations, I feel, goes considerably further. I think the biggest example is if your staff brings everyone they know and their family to you, and there's no question on what you recommend, I think you've built a pretty good system, because dental assistants are seeing every single procedure you're doing. They're seeing the results live. Mm-hmm. They're seeing how you handle little things like, someone's gums are more inflamed. Does it make sense to the procedure today? What makes more sense? So to me, the biggest thing was, even today, each day, is situational. How you handle it. Is what you're doing the best thing to do for that person, for that patient? I often say, if someone needs to do a procedure that we would get compensated for today, and it makes more sense dollar sense wise, but it's not the right thing, we should do something else or postpone it, I'm always going to go with that better option. So I think when people see that okay, there's no games here. It's doing strictly what's best for the patient, for the situation, for your staff as well, because you don't want to, keep them there till 8 p.m. either. That quickly can build the rapport there. For example, yesterday, I think I was telling you earlier, we had a very booked, busy day. Mm-hmm. Somehow the first patient slot was open, someone canceled. Emergency came in, I knew, okay, if there's just something we had to take care of, we got to move, pretty efficiently here. And we made it work. We didn't really run behind much that day. That patient was in a lot of pain, came in, we gave him some anesthesia. He was totally fine. Procedure was done. He left happy, out of pain. So when your staff sees that you actually care about what's going on, the reputation of not just you in the office, but your staff in the community, that goes a very long way. On the flip side though, if it's 4:30 and our day ends at 4 and we're still there, and a patient walks in, is like, oh, this is going on. I'm like, listen, hey, I have to do what's best for the staff as well. We can only be crisp and on it if we're sharp, and if I keep them here till 6 p.m., we're going to be in some trouble.
Right,
and
absolutely.
People understand that.
No.
I've had people say, yeah, I'll see you tomorrow. And they're there first thing in the morning and we're good to go. So I think those things, time is a big one, but the biggest thing is just situational kind of awareness, or how you handle certain situations in front of them, in front of anyone. That's what makes the biggest difference.
And it sounds like you're using a lot of emotional intelligence to make sure that you understand that, your actions, your mood, the things that you're doing do really affect your staff.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm known to be grumpy in the morning. I'm not a morning person. It is how I leave my house at 7 a.m. every day. Not sure. It works. It's down to the point where they know.
Yeah.
If I'm having coffee, they're like, oh yeah, his coffee machine's not working at home. He's out of pods. It's like, you have it. You have your coffee. I always say my ideal working time is like Tuesday at 10 a.m. till Thursday at 1 p.m. Outside of those, but we still have a good time, and now it's more than just, oh, so how was your weekend? Blah, blah. Now we can kind of like mess with each other, you have really good rapport. And, we're approaching 2 years and we have everyone we basically hired day one is still there. Where a lot of new offices, especially, that takes a while to get to. So we're pretty proud of that.
I would be too. I mean, it's definitely, you're building that. And that's something that we at Operation Dental have been very, very much believers in, is building that, keeping that family kind of culture, because that's one of the things about this industry also that you see is that most practices have very much almost like you're just extended family. It's not just, hey, you're an employee that works for me. It's like, no, actually, I want to know about your spouse. I want to know what's going on with your kids. And you just, it's one of those things that's it's really refreshing to see that from somebody, especially like me, who came from outside the industry, that, there are still industries that you do have those kind of connections and bonds.
Yeah. And people really appreciate that. As time goes on, I feel like, especially in iffy economic times, those relationships dwindle greatly. Your trust in the place you work could very much dwindle based on decisions made by people you don't even know. So still having that goes a long way. And it's not just them. I know my staff's family because they come in all the time. When they need dental work, I'm the one doing it. But also, I get to know them on a higher level, but also it evokes a level of trust they have in me that, hey, I'm okay with you working on my daughter, my husband, and my parents, all these things. And they're not just coming in, they're saying, okay, let's quickly get it done, because they trust that, we know how, which is also a great feeling, and also a good sign. Well,
no, actually, that's a great sign, because it's one of those things, they have that, to have that trust in you to work on a very close family member. That is, I think that is the ultimate sign of any trust for anybody. That's one thing I will say. It's like, all my family come to our practices too, because I know I can recommend any of our practices and not be like, oh, no, don't go to this one. That's awful. It's like, no, it's like, look, all our practices, we have great dentists, we have great staff. You're always going to be in good hands, but I've actually heard of stories where, from either practice we bought or people that have come in from other organizations or other practices. And they're like, yeah, no, we never went to our own practice. It's like, we knew better. And it's like, so to hear that is actually very refreshing. And it is also very, it is the ultimate sign of trust in my eyes.
It's funny, actually, my first job in Orlando, I didn't let my brother or my mom actually come to the office, because it's also so, hit or miss. And it was so wild. I was like, not only are you going to drive far, it's not a great environment. Just don't worry. Fast forward 1 year, 2 years. Yeah. They're following me with every office we're in. They're getting whatever work done. Obviously I'm doing it regardless, but just like the ambiance and the atmosphere, I was like, don't even come, So yeah, you definitely have to invoke that, because I myself, when I was just working offices, I did the same thing. I didn't bring my family into one place, but I did the other.
And it makes sense. It really does. And so since we were kind of talking about the whole, you're building the camaraderie, the team, stuff like that. So obviously during this first few months, and even till now, I'm sure you guys have experienced stressful moments in the practice. There's been some stressful days. Is there anything that you do to kind of help alleviate that stress or help the team get through those stressful times? Yeah.
And those stressful moments you learn from each one. You learn what can be accommodated, what can be kind of, rescheduled, what can be done right then and there, how to manage the day to day. We're now a year and a half, we kind of have it down pat, because we were trying to do some moments too much, too fast, some moments too slow, So really finding that medium of what we can physically and mentally handle, but also within the quality and product we want to give. It's tricky. It takes time, So with the staff, it's a whole lot of, because they're not just, they know how to do everything, but it's how I do it, which I always said, 100 different dentists, you have 100 different methods, all the same, but all a little different, like when it comes down to like little brushes I use, they're very specific. So it takes time. In those first couple of weeks, I remember telling them, okay, listen, this is going to feel a little funny. Okay. I'm not mad at anyone. I'm not stressed. Things have to be done a certain way, because I know done this way, they work.
Right.
So it's tricky because every procedure for like a couple weeks, even if you've done it a couple times, you're kind of like reminding and teaching and relearning and honing in. So things take a little bit longer. You're explaining things more. Now I don't even like look. I know what they're giving me. My eyes are looking, at the procedure, at the patient, because I know it's correct. Sometimes I'll mumble something and they somehow know when I'm mumbling. And like, yeah, that's what that is.
So you got to get that little bit of like time. ESP thing going.
Yeah, that's basically what's going on, So it takes a little bit of time. And, now you can ask them, they're all still at the office. They'll say like, oh yeah, the first couple of weeks, it was, we were kind of like figuring things out, how you like them. Because everyone comes from very different backgrounds.
Oh, absolutely.
And when they see like, okay, first and foremost, the experience of the patient, the quality matters the most, then all these to sometimes weird, funny things I'm making them do, they make a lot of sense. They make a lot more sense in why we're doing it and how we're doing it.
And it's also one of those things it's one of those things that is good to hear. You took the time to teach them, because I know sometimes, and I think it's just being the fact that some people, they get into that stress of, okay, we were open the practice. I've got all these things going on. We've got the bills to pay. Yeah. We've got a massive mortgage going on, or, right. A massive rent check we have to, and they think everybody just should know everything right out of the gate. And it's like, they get very, they see their team members failing because, oh, well, you don't know what I need, so I'm not going to keep you. Let's get somebody else in here versus, if we just took a couple of weeks, let's take those moments. Let me show you what I need and teach you. That will make for a much better outcome and make for a much more successful practice.
Yeah, absolutely. And honestly, de novos are very unique because you're going to have days where we had 3 patients on the books, like for me to see. The hygienist was seeing her patients. I was consulting them. Most of them, like, I'll come back for whatever treatment I need, if they need any. So I had a lot of free time. So if I'm doing a couple fillings, I had the opportunity, which is very unique, that I didn't have to see a patient after that. Patient left, I could talk to my staff, say, okay, this is what we want to do. This is what we want to improve. This is something I probably should have done differently. This is how we'll do it. Is there anything you want me to do that I can make it easier? Okay, does that work? Does that not work? You can really quickly self-evaluate yourselves on what just happened, not on the procedure, because we know the quality is good quality, but how we did it and how I want it to be done and how we feel it should be done, how to make it better, things like that. We got to quickly self-evaluate ourselves and say, okay, this is what we should do. So it's very unique to where you actually have the time. When you acquire an office that's been there for 40 years, you might actually have someone right there next. So it could be trickier for that staff that's existing, or even someone you brought in on a busy day to kind of figure out. Whenever you bring in like a temp, like someone, say your assistant calls out or on vacation, those are the trickiest days because they're not there for more than a day.
Right.
But you want the day to go as seamlessly as possible. So that's why de novos are very unique to where everything is in your own image. Like everything you want to be done in that way can be done, because at first you have the time. So when it gets busy, like it is now, like it was 3 months, 30 days, whatever it was later, it's easy. It's boom, boom, boom. Things are ready to go.
Now, talking about process and the fact that, you guys were able to evaluate, obviously, for those first few months, is that something that you still go back to occasionally and say, hey, let's look at how we're doing things and can we make it even better? Or is it something you guys kind of just, you've got your groove and you're just saying, okay, now that everything's kind of set, let's just keep rocking?
A little bit of both.
Okay.
Within the paradigms of what you do, there's obviously ways to improve upon them. And we're always looking at that. A lot of that falls on me. Dental technology is rapidly progressing. So we constantly have reps coming in, showing me this, showing me that. I'm like, okay, we'll try this. This could save us this. This could show us more time here. We can make these fillings last longer, all these things. So we try them. And which in the cases that if it changes things, then we have to adjust. But it's always easier when you have a good foundation to adjust than when you're kind of like, oh, I wasn't sure what we're doing in the first place, to change things. So when we do larger cases that involve a very thorough treatment plan and multiple, appointments over weeks or months, the first couple of times we did that, I had a checklist for myself and my assistants to go through together during the procedure. We knew I knew what was going on. But to them, there's like, hey, we haven't done this that often. We're not sure. I'm like, just follow what I'm saying. It's different materials, different everything. So we just discussed it a little bit before. We went through, I kept talking to them while I'm giving patients breaks. We're talking well, what's next? Just saying what's immediately next. I'm not like overbearing them.
Right.
Make sure we have all the equipment, materials we need. And then you just keep going in that flow. And then when we're all done, okay, this is what we're doing next time. And I'm not just talking to the patient, like, hey, well, this is what we did today. This is what we're doing next time. I always tell my staff, when I'm talking to the patient, I'm also talking to you. So you know what needs to be set up, what needs to be booked for how long, where, how.
Makes sense.
So when that patient comes back, that level of the standard of care, the product continues.
Yeah, and it's interesting you talk about, especially with the technology and everything changing, because I think it goes back to we as humans like to get into our routines and we don't like to break them. So we're kind of creatures of habit. So the fact, and that's kind of where I was kind of going with that question was to see, a lot of, and it's not that it's a bad thing, because obviously if you've got something that works, you don't want to really break it. But there is that whole thing that with things, technology is changing so fast for all of us that, being the fact that I also do a lot of the technology behind the scenes, I see a lot of the technologies that's coming down the road. They're like, oh, this could affect us, or this could be something great for us. So hearing that you guys are also doing the same thing is really refreshing. And the fact that you are willing to try new things and add new things to the practice, I think is also part of why you guys have been successful. Yeah,
in a lot of cases, that's how you grow. That's how an office grows.
Absolutely.
You probably remember. You probably seen it.
Mm-hmm.
You go into like a dental office that's been there for 20 years. You're like, why is it musty? Why is that? It just feels, even though you trust the dentist and the staff, it feels off. Funny story. A couple of weeks ago, me and some friends went on a trip, and two of them came in. They were coming to pick me up. Then we were going. They came in to get their cleanings. They were much overdue. That's a whole nother story. We took a panoramic image, which is an X-ray that goes around your head. And the machine we have, which is also a CT, it speaks to you. It goes, starting, this will rotate around your head, stay still, back up. And my friends were like, what is going on? And we're in our late 20s, early 30s, or they're in their late 20s, I'm not. But, and they're like, we haven't been to the dentist in ages, so we haven't seen anything like this. This is kind of crazy. I feel like I'm in a spaceship right now. So when patients, it's not just your treatment and your workflow can become more efficient. It's also, patients are impressed by that. It shows you're looking to modernize things in a way that works. We're coming in a world of 3D printing.
Yes.
People printing quality crowns, retainers, night guards in the office. There's a lot that's going towards. And I think we talked about it like a year ago, to where the scanners that were the biggest thing 3 years ago, people are more accustomed to.
Yeah. And it's one of those things, that was something I was going to bring up and mention too, is that, first time in one of our practices, literally, I think in a matter, I did Invisalign, did a clear aligner, and they had to do the alginate, which, anybody who's ever gone through that knows that is not a fun experience.
Yeah, impressions, yeah.
And then like a month later, we got our first scanner at that practice, and it was like, I couldn't have waited a month. But it is amazing as a patient sitting there watching the screen as it's building a 3D representation of your teeth in your mouth. It is something really amazing to watch.
Yeah, it's a complete, utter game changer. The prep time and the materials you need are so much less. And the patient gets whatever case they're doing. We do crowns, bridges, at this point, actually almost anything, dentures, partial dentures, implant stents, night guards, all with the scanner.
Yeah.
That gets sent to the lab within the hour, sometimes sooner. So instead of me pouring it up, waiting for it to dry, the next day, hopefully it's not a Friday or Saturday, pack it up. UPS or FedEx has to come pick it up. They don't come pick it up. Okay, I got to drive there, drop it off. Takes however many days, depending where the lab is in the country or the world. Then it gets mailed back. We're talking 2.5 weeks turnaround time for products to 3 or 4 days. Yeah. So patients are getting things they need significantly faster. It's just making patient experience better. And on a business model side, way more efficient. There's way less waiting time. Like patients are in temporaries before like 3 weeks. Now they can be out in a week. couple days even,
Yeah, or even a day, depending on the setup. Because I mean, you do have same day crowns for the CEREC machines.
Yeah.
We actually, one of our practices does have one of those, and one of our practices is experimenting with 3D printing now.
Yeah.
And it's kind of amazing to see the results. I've actually got to sit through and see some of the results and see the process, and it's pretty amazing to watch.
Yeah, and it's predictable. Once you have that system down pat, then you're in good shape. It's almost like you grow. You hit a point where you're like, all right, things are good, and then you start again. So that's just a way that your practice is progressing, and it's also for patients. They're like kind of impressed by that. It's kind of like interesting. Like, oh wow, this is very state of the art. It's modern. So it goes a long way.
And that's pretty much it. I would totally agree with you there. So to go back to where we kind of started the conversation. Now, and this has actually been great. Now, it's one of those things. It's always good to hear dentist perspective on a lot of this stuff, especially the technology things that are happening, because I think that's a lot of things that people don't think about. It's like these are things you have to think about with even any practice. Is that there are so many new tools that are being introduced almost daily that could potentially be a game changer for your practice, and if you've never done it. There's a chance that, especially if you're an older dentist, you're like, well, I just don't trust it, or, I just don't see the point, but then you find out, oh, wait, this is something that could really make a major impact on the practice, on the business, and on patients' lives, make their lives better. But so we opened, obviously, for those first, and one of the questions I wanted to ask and talk about was, for those first few months, what were some of the things that happened that you didn't expect? What were those bumps that you're like, oh, I never would have thought of that in a million years?
Yeah. The story I always tell people is the first patient was a friend of mine. He needed some work. I'm like, hey man, come first thing in the morning, be our first patient, we'll see what happens. You might be the only one I see the day. I have no idea. He comes in, I turn back. The instruments are just sitting there. I'm like, where's the tray? The assistant goes, what tray? We never order trays. Between the million things we're ordering, somehow, a tray is the only way to transport things cleanly, easily. And she was almost looking at me like, yeah, I was kind of confused. I'm like, where? Oh my God. So I got my friend Num. I ran to the front desk. I'm like, okay, we need to order. And they picked these purple trays, and that's just not the atmosphere, the environment of my office. I'm like, no. Hold on. Look for some that actually fit what we're looking for. We found some, and then we got them in a couple of days. But you just don't know what's coming. The second patient, it was a older gentleman, a third molar, wisdom tooth. I haven't done a lot of wisdom teeth since residency. And I sat there, and it wasn't too bad. I'm like, okay, we can take this out for you, no problem. Surgical procedure, we got taken care of. But I was sitting there, I'm like, even if I wanted to send this to an oral surgeon, that's another thing. Who is the oral surgeon I would send this to? So that leads to just 3-4 months of meeting a lot of different people.
Yeah.
Specialists that are close by, that you thought are close by, but are not. Kind of honing that in, who you like to work with. And then the biggest thing is just how to deal with these random days you're going to have. Because you could wake up that morning, you come in, and if there's not much on the schedule, you don't know what's walking in the door. So we did that surgical wisdom tooth extraction, which a lot of dentists don't do much anymore.
Right.
I sent the oral surgeon, and my assistant told me after, like, that was the first time I did that. I was walking her through. I'm like, oh, do this, do that, hold this, hold there. I was like, I'll take care of 80% of it. Just do this. And yeah, he was fine. Person was totally happy. We saw him 2 weeks later for follow-up. Good to go. But it's just so interesting because it's the unknown. You don't know what is going to happen, what's going to change. And in between those moments where you have to adjust constantly, which is I think one of the biggest things, is you're setting things up for later. For example, we have a whole cart for root canal supplies, and I like it organized in a certain way. So I can just quickly grab things cleanly, go back and forth. It takes some time to set up, and we have it, you see what you ordered and say what's missing, what's there not of, what's there enough of, what's there's too much of. So you're kind of figuring that all out. So this is very funny because the unknown is what you walk into every day. I know exactly what I'm doing 8 a.m. Monday.
Yeah.
Okay. 2 years ago, I had no clue what I was doing at 8 a.m. any day. Right. So that's the funniest part is you just have to be ready for anything. But that's the exciting part, because while you're doing that, you are, inciting or putting in your culture. Everything is an image of how you wanted to do it the exact way. So that's the exciting part as well.
And that's actually, I think, good advice for people, because it's one of those things, it's like with anything, it's like you're going into something that's completely unknown, and it does add that excitement to it, but also it's that challenge to say, I've got to be willing and flexible enough to understand that I need to be able to do this. I also want to kind of touch on something real quick. I don't want to spend a lot of time on it, but you mentioned building relationships with other providers. So like if you have to send out to specialists, what's your advice on that? Or how did you go about doing that?
It took a while, honestly. There are some specialty groups that they have offices spread about that I was already aware of, that I knew pretty well. I'd worked with them before. Some were like right in the middle of where I used to work and where I work now. So that was easy, send them to that way. It really comes back to the patient experience, because some of these things, they're not procedures I can't do or I don't want to do. It's like, if it takes me 30 minutes, but it takes a specialist 15, and if we run into a roadblock, I might get stuck, but they have every instrument known to man for that procedure, you're in better hands. So it goes back to more of a conventional style dentistry where, not everything's under one roof, which I think a lot of people have gotten used to over the past couple of years. But if my main thing is quality, I want you to go somewhere where that person is there at that different office every single day. They're a specialist. They only do that procedure. And then you come back and see me to finish things off. And that was the big thing. So honestly, I made like cold calls to these specialty offices. I was like, what's around me? Got on Google, pediatric dentists around me, and I called a couple. Some didn't call back. Some did. Some were very excited because they obviously knew the area was booming, or they were watching the office get built. They knew we're open. Some just walk right in the door, say, hey, we saw you're open, want to meet you. And then, then you kind of have to, because you don't know that office, you don't know that environment. So it takes some time to see, what do you align with, or what, if it's like, okay, this is very complicated, I'm going to send this to this person. If it's not too bad, and that's all on top of the stuff of what do I take care of myself? So I really try to take it back to what just makes the most sense. Because every third patient, they one of the first things they tell me, they had a bad experience. It's okay, we don't want that again, because that bad experience that kept you away from me for 10 years led us to this day where something's bothering you. Okay, so we don't want that to happen again. So let's do it right the first time. Let's do X, Y, and Z. We'll get this figured out. But if your experience is good, you'll stay on top of it and you won't have these issues again. So it was tricky, but it took some time. And I'm pretty comfortable with who we're working with now, who's around us. Area is still growing. So there's new providers opening every 6 months. So, you kind of see how things go. Yeah.
No, that makes sense. Because also, I'm sure you have to build that trust with them as well, that they're doing the quality that you expect them to.
Yeah, exactly. That's the biggest thing. You come back, you do the restorative restoration or the final restoration, and you want to make sure you like, how things work, because you're still standing by your work. And to an extent, you're standing by who you referred that patient to. So you need to make sure everything is kind of aligned.
Well, it's basically you're putting your name in that referral. So that's that whole thing, is that it comes down to you're putting your reputation on the line, that this person's going to do the job that you want them to do, that you would do if it was you doing the work.
Yeah.
So that is, absolutely. I can see that is we're going to take not going to be a short process in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah. Luckily we got it right pretty quick. We didn't have a lot of misses there, so it worked out.